What's up, party people? This is part two, week two, my contender analysis, and I'll say there's been some shifts, but not a lot. If you watch my first episode, blue and green, we didn't see a lot from. But when you do see a little bit from the tribe, those moments tend to be a little bit more magnified. And so when we're looking for a winner, we want to see consistent content every episode. They're usually somebody who's visible, and you get a sense of what they're thinking through each and every episode. So that's going to be something to look at as we look at the contenders as we move forward in this season. Vochi, he was 10th pick after the first, and so he's been voted out. Not a surprise. I did feel like his winner content in the first episode wasn't too strong. We just got to know that he was a pretty smart guy who thought a little bit differently than the tribe, and he seemed to be well connected, but we didn't get a lot of content about why he chose to vote out Abraham, especially as the guy seemed to kind of be in cahoots. So we never really got a good edit from him. And so it's no surprise he's gone. So let's jump right into it. And again, let's just start from the top. Number one, I'm going to get blasted for this because people are ruling her out entirely. But Tiffany's still my number one. And you're probably thinking, yo, Teek, Survivor Teek, you don't know what's good. Tiffany, she said I'm exhausted. She said I'm tired. She messed up the challenge. If you look at the challenge, she had some content where she kind of overcame. And a really important theme for a winner is that they're seen to be right. They're seen to be correct. They're seen to be to have a good pulse. And as much of an absolute mess that tribal council was, where why did they vote out Vochi? The only person who was really pushing for Vochi was Tiffany of all people. Tiffany was the one who decided to change the script. Liana said that Xander's gotta go. Evvie said that Xander's gotta go. The other two, Xander and Vochi, said that Tiffany's gotta go. So the only person who was really proven to be correct this episode was Tiffany of all people. We need more of that pre-Vivor storyline edit. I always thought we are gonna get the super underdog storyline from Tiffany, and I think we're seeing a bit of that. We're seeing somebody who seems to be making kind of poor strategic decisions, but she still somehow has this tight bond with Evie and Liana, where they're almost able to just nerf their entire chance to win a challenge for loyalty for her. And so I think that's definitely understated. You're starting to see it difficult on how Tiffany may be able to win in a jury. I know we're only in episode 2, but there's so much more gameplay to be had, and so I think Tiffany's an intelligent person. I think we're going to see more content from her. We're seeing consistent visibility. We're seeing how she feels. We're understanding I'm tired. I'm exhausted. As much as that seems like it's negative, getting a sense of how she's feeling, that's really important for a winner. We want to be able to relate to them emotionally. And we're getting great content from Tiffany. So still at number one. Number two, we didn't get a lot from him either this episode, but JD. I had him as number two. We got to see JD chat with Ricardo at the well. And I think that's important because JD and Ricardo seem to be kind of at opposite ends of the spectrum in the first episode, and JD rebuilt that bridge. If you remember in the first episode, Ricardo was like, I'm gunning for JD. JD's gotta go. And to have them at the well, kind of bearing the hatchet, even though Brad was kind of out there taking a look at them, that's good content for JD. He's still staying relevant. He himself is a pretty big character and big personality, so I think that this is a little bit more understated. We didn't get 15 confessionals from him like we did in the first episode, but we're still getting good, consistent content from JD, even if now one little clip. So I'm keeping him a number two. He has that additional vote. We're seeing him do his social connections. He's a strong threat. We saw him do well in the puzzle, so I have him still at two. Number three is a bit of a jump up, and this is Sydney. This is the law student on the Blue tribe. You're probably still who's Sydney? Blue is so irrelevant because they're probably never going to go to tribal council because they're so stacked physically and mentally for the challenges. But Sydney seems to be the most prominent player on Blue. I had Danny from the first episode, but Sydney was the one who really gave us insight into how the Blue tribe is thinking. She seems to be the Blue tribe. And we got our content after this year's, amazing kind of personal confessional about we kind of need him. We thought that we were going to just learn as much as we can from him and getting breadfruit and making fire and then just booting this guy off. But now we're getting to know him and we kind of like the guy. And so I watch a lot of Big Brother as well, and it's kind of who is the house? People always say, oh, it's a house decision. I can't go against the house. But there's always somebody or a group of people who are the house. Sydney feels like she's the house. She is the Blue tribe. And we're getting that sense from her, and we're getting well-rationed arguments from her. We got to know a little bit about her, about her travel in the first episode. We're getting a well-rounded edit from Sydney for as little content as we have from her and as little relevance that the Blue Tribe has. And that means a lot. And so we have her all the way up from 7 to 3. Number 4, this is a consistent pick for me, it's Evvie. Evvie by far has had the most content. She has the most confessionals. Like episode 2 was basically the Evvie show. Like we got like so much content from her, from the journey, on the swing vote, talking about the advantage. She's in the middle of the 2 alliances. She's talking about why are we moving into Vochi. Liana has some good kind of second person content about Evvie, where she's talking about Evvie's my number 1 person. I love to strategize with her. So we got a lot from her. We also got a lot of both bad and good. The bad was on the journey, where she was just over talking about her game and saying all this stuff about things that she doesn't have to reveal, her tribe secrets. My issue still with Evvie's edit is we never are really understanding how she's feeling. She seems like what I like to call a strategic game bots. She's thinking about the numbers, she's thinking about how to progress herself, but we don't get her heart, and which is interesting. We don't know a lot about her own personal life either, and so that's still kind of a little bit unclear. So for example, we haven't had like that real strong package from her. She was all the first confessional of the entire season. That's usually a big check for a winner. But I just think she's going to be a really main character. She seems to be in the middle of strategies. We got her with Deshawn. I could still see Evvie potentially winning. It's still very early, but we're not getting a lot of heart from Evvie, unlike the other kind of top 3 contenders, where we start to really see, where their mind is at. Exception of Sydney, but I think Sydney's edit will improve. But JD and Tiffany, we got amazing kind of personal edits from them in the first episode, and so that's important. We haven't gotten that from Evvie yet, but I think there's still time. So she rounds out the top 4. In the Survivor world, in the Edgic world, the top 4 is kind of like where the contenders start and stop. So below the top 4, I'll go through them, but yeah, those are the people that I have at the top right now. For 5, I moved Shan up. I had Shan pretty low. I had her at 9. People really like Shan's edit. People still think she's the winner pick. I moved her up. Shan seemed pretty reasoned on the Green Tribe. She was the one who kind of Brad seemed to trust and was like, hey, Shan, I'm going to run out. And then Shan ended up going to Ricardo. Ricardo's like, she's my number 1. How, Shan seemed to kind of flip the tide against Brad, which was what Ricardo and Sarah, I think, wanted. So Shan seems to be pretty well positioned. I think it was probably a good move for her to out Brad to Ricardo, just to make sure that somebody else is on the bottom of the totem pole instead of her. Might come back and bite her in throwing Brad if Brad finds out that Shan was a bit of a rat. But we didn't get this over the top edit from Shan. We got a bit more of a reasoned, strategic vibe from her, and I'm liking that version of Shan. I can see that being a little bit more prominent. We did get some personal content from her the first episode, not a lot, but enough to kind of know what she's about. So number 5 seems like a good number for her, and we'll see if she can keep moving up. Number 6. So this is a big jump up. I had Nasir near the bottom of the pack, but I moved him up to number 6. And I really think that his first episode content has almost been completely turned for the better in the second episode. He was a mess, and then he basically had Sydney say he's not a mess anymore. We like Nasir. Nasir had that personal content he needed. It talked about him loving the show, and he tied it together with a theme as well, where although this season has no theme, it's like a faster pace, 26 days, drop the 40, it's season 1, and Nasir kind of brought that up in his confessional as well. And survivors who tend to connect with the theme usually are more linked to the winner because they've embraced the theme more. And so that's part of the reason why I have Nasir as a really big jump up. That really did seem to me like the only real strong winner quote we had this entire episode, where we got that content. Where at the end of the season, if you have a montage of Nasir, we're going to see that confessional if he's the winner, where he said, this is what I live for. I live for the faster paced game. I've always wanted to see this. And so I love that from Nasir. Nothing but good content from him this episode. He went from a negative to a complete positive tone. And so having that, reversal shows survival. And so I think he's on the upswing, and we should get a lot of content from a lot of other people. So 6 is where Nasir is at, and I think he has more upside. I put my stock in him. Number 7, it's a bit of a drop, but it's Xander. Xander had a bit of a mess of an episode. We still got a lot of content from him. We got to know how he was thinking. We got to know why he wanted Tiffany out. he was wrong again. He misplayed that advantage, but we did get some interesting content about, we got to see how he kind of thought through using that advantage, and we're getting to know Xander's gameplay. But I think it's just because Xander's tied to the twists. He's the first to find this beware advantage, and so we need to understand Xander's viewpoint, because that's one of the mechanics that the Survivor producers have put into this episode. And Xander's a pretty good orator. He's a good confessional, but he just kind of lost his grip on the game this episode entirely. Like, Evvie completely steamrolled. He doesn't even have a vote. He has no power. I don't really know where he goes from here. I think his only hope is that the tribe thinks he's strong and they vote off. The Girls Alliance breaks down and they vote off each other, and that's the only real way I see Xander moving forwards. If there's a tribe swap, he's a strong player, and so they might kick him out before he becomes a threat in the individual immunities later on. I don't see a path for victory from him, but he's at 7 because we still have really good, interesting, complex thoughts from him, and but I think he's on the downswing. Number 8, Danny. We literally did not see Danny this episode. He was 3 for me before. He's dropped down 5. Danny still had a very strong first episode, but it could just be because he's a celebrity. He's an NFL player, and so, for the people who were watching the episode for the first time, watching the season for the first time, it's kind of cool to see, hey, this is like this actual NFL player who's on this season. So maybe that's why they gave him a bit more of an edit the first episode, just to kind of hook viewers in. The fact that he got no edit at all this episode is pretty damning for him, to be quite frank. 8's still pretty high, but I was thinking of trying to drop him lower, but there was no negative content. So I think he can redeem himself. We'll see what happens when Blue does go to Tribal and who's in control and who do we hear from. And Danny could come back. Number 9 is where I have Ricardo. So that's a jump up. I had him at 11. He's now at 9. We still understand Ricardo. I thought it was more situational first episode. I still think it is situational. But we did see Ricardo reintegrate himself back in. We saw him talk to JD. We saw him talk to Shan. We're understanding how Ricardo is reintegrating himself after losing Sarah. That's good for him. We're understanding where he stands in the show and where he can move to advance himself. And we're going to get strategic content from him. So he's a jump up. He's at 9. I think he's on the upswing as well. We could see him move up a little bit more. He still gives me negative vibes, but he could just be a little bit of a villainous character this season. And so we'll see how that plays out. 10, I have Brad moving up. Brad was 13 for me. I have him up at 10 just because of visibility. We saw Brad. We saw him running around like a crazy person, which I quite enjoyed. I thought it was really funny. We saw him acting like a deer in the woods in his little spy shack. At the end of the day, we got good content from him too. He said, I think JD has an advantage. I think he has an idol. JD does have an advantage. He has that additional vote, which he lied about. And that's part of the reason why JD might be feeling more confident. He just found that out at Tribal last episode. So Brad kind of had a good read, and being correct is important. He was correct the first episode too, when he was like Sarah or Shan, and then Sarah was voted out. So Brad's getting good correct content. He has weird content because it seems like a bit of like a social mess. He did well on the challenge. He's doing well physically. He seems pretty likable. We got a preview content from him where him and JD were chatting. So it looks like Brad is still continuing to be an important character moving forward. So I'm moving him up. We did get that personal content from him about him losing his father and about the type of work that he does. So it is quite curious that we did get that personal content. I think he's going to be a player that goes deep. Not enough winner content yet, but he's on the upswing. Number 11, Fall from Grace, Erica. She had a good first episode. I had her as high as 6. We got absolutely nothing from her invisible edit. So she's down 5 points. We need to see more from Erica. Like, we even got some stuff from Sydney and Deshawn and Nasir, so it's a little bit inexcusable that she didn't get that content. So unless we get more from Erica, she's going to keep sliding down. Number 12, I have Jeannie. Same kind of story. Jeannie had a pretty good first episode, just because we did get that personal content from her. We didn't really get any strategic content from her. This episode, we got nothing from her. I didn't even see her on the episode other than on the challenge, where she did fine. But we didn't even see her, so again, that's a drop. Visibility is so important. If you're not getting a confessional, if you're not seen, you're going to drop at the contender rankings to the point where it might be a big black mark moving forwards. Somebody who's visible is always going to be seen as somebody better as a contender for someone that's not visible. So Jeannie, you're there at number 12. 13, I have Deshawn, and we got that personal content from Deshawn finally. I had him at the bottom, so he's moved up 3. I moved him up, but so the bad first episode was tough for Deshawn. Deshawn's content was situational. He was on the journey, and we got some nice personal content, but we didn't get a lot more. We didn't understand how he was feeling about Evie opening up. We also got some negative content from Deshawn in this episode about not being able to start the fire. He seems happy-go-lucky. He's definitely contributing for the tribe, but it's not enough to see him as the all-around winner yet. But it's an upswing. You're up 3, so good for you, Deshawn. 14, Liana. Liana seems to be in a pretty good spot as Evie's number 2, but Liana wasn't able to convince Tiffany. She herself said, I wish Evie was here. I still don't even know anything about Liana. We haven't gotten any real personal content from Liana, any type of thoughts, feelings. I don't know what her family life is or anything like that. So it's a drop. It's 14. I don't see her as the winner. Otherwise, I think we would see a lot more interesting, complex thought from her in these first couple tribals about the vote-offs of Abraham and Vochi. The only person we're really getting good complex thought here is Evie, and then we're getting some good secondary content from Xander and Tiffany. Liana seems to be the least edited in that remaining tribe of 4 on the yellow tribe, and that's pretty bad if you're the winner. So 14 is where you are. 15 at the bottom, Heather. Who are you, Heather? We got her one confessional on the boat about, and this is the first episode, about how her family watches the show. It just seemed like fluff. In retrospect, it didn't really feel like anything about her story. Everybody's family watches the show. We just saw her cheering on the bench for Danny at this immunity challenge, and we've seen nothing else from her. The fact that she's sitting out and the fact that other members of Blue got some content today looks bad for her. I think she's going to be the purple, and so this is a whole Survivor terminology for the Nicaragua season. I think that's season 21, where there is a player called Kelly. She went by Purple Kelly because she had purple hair. There's another Kelly Bruno in that season. And we basically never saw her the entire season as she quit. Like, she had literally 2 confessionals the entire season. And so Heather only, I think, has 1 confessional so far, which is a side confessional that she had in the first episode. So could be Purple Heather. So if you're not edited, you're not going to win. So Heather, you're at 15. I think it's going to be tough for anybody from 11 to 15 in my rankings to make it as the winner. I still feel quite strongly about the top 4. I feel very strong about Tiffany and about JD and about Sydney and about Evie. She's the most well edited. I think she's going to make it deep. She could be 5th place, 4th place, 3rd place, but she's just not enough content to be the winner. Yeah, so that's kind of where the edit is, and yeah, I'm sure I've taken up a lot of your time, so thanks for watching. Feel free to subscribe, tell me if you disagree or agree in the comments, and yeah, we'll check in again next week, and we'll see how the contenders change then. Take care, everybody.